Hello and welcome to the Move Moolah Podcast. I am your host, Ben Yenny, and with me today is Manny Serrano, who is the former host of the Filmmaking Sucks podcast, as well as the current executive director of the Long Island Film Expo, International Film Expo.
Technical director. Yeah. Technical director of Long Island International Film Expo. Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Today, I think we're going to talk a bit about genre because it is spooky season. And we're also going to talk about festivals and how to play in them and how to get the most out of them from somebody who is a technical director of a film fest. So, Manny, how did you end up as the technical director?
I honestly don't know how it happened. It just kind of happened. The festival's been the festival we just ended our 26th year, and in 2019 or so, I started talking to Deborah Markowitz, who's the president of the board. The festival is run by the Long Island Film and Television Foundation, and she's the president of that board. Deborah was also the film commissioner of Nassau County for 35 years or so, and she ran the festival. And after 20-ish years of doing it, they started to look toward the future and realize they can't do this forever, obviously, but they also don't want the festival to die. So somehow along the way of being being a filmmaker, I attended the festival, been there, and met Deborah at other festivals. Myself and my wife Lindsay, who was also the co-host of Filmmaking Sucks with me, became friends with Deborah and her husband John, and they run the festival with Ann and Henry Stamfel, who owned the movie theater that the festival is at. And they kind of started discussing with us about, in the future, when it's time for them to go, they want people to kind of take over, and that kind of became our conversation, and that's how we got brought on to them. And coincidentally, in 2020, we moved to Long Island. We always lived in Queens, so it was a conversation that had been going back and forth for a while. As soon as we moved to Long Island, within a month, Deborah contacted us and said, okay, you guys are here now. You're officially local to the festival. What do you think? So they brought us on, and we've been with the festival since 2021 was our first year officially with the festival.
That's a weird time to start. Were you guys doing in person? Or
2020 they did a drive-in. Okay. The festival's in July, so they closed submissions in February of 2020. So by the time they closed submissions, everything was still open. The lockdowns hadn't begun yet. So lockdowns, everything started shutting down in March or so, and they'd already started accepting films. They'd already started contacting people, and it's like, well, we have to do something. And most festivals went virtual, and they did create a virtual component for the festival, but they really wanted to do something in person. So they came up and they figured out how to do a drive-in. And they did a drive-in in late July of 2020. And then 2021, we were in person because Nassau County was open.
Okay.
We had restrictions. Basically, the fire marshal was there and checking the capacity. I think at the time the theater could only be 50% capacity, and we also rent out. We have the fireman's exempt hall, which is next door to the theater, and we use that as our filmmakers lounge, and we have panels and Q&As and everything in there all week long, and meeting and networking and interviews and everything. So yeah, we had to keep everybody had to be masks, and we had to keep track of how many people were physically in the room. But we were able to do an in-person festival in 2021. So yeah, it was weird to come on at that time, but I also think it was I feel like it worked to our benefit coming on then, because everything kind of had to be scaled down. We were able to, Lindsay and I were able to slowly come into the festival. It was,
Mhm.
you know, like half capacity as normal, you know, as it would have been a normal thing. So we were able to learn things a little easier, you know, while it was a little bit more stressful trying to, you know, deal with those rules. I
Mhm.
think that it gave us the freedom to kind of, all right, we can come in slowly. We're not just thrown into the super thick of it, full blown festival. So I do think that that worked in our favor.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've done a fair amount of events
Mhm.
in my day, generally around the business of film, not really on the consumer end, which is really what more of what a festival is. But having that time to scale before you're in front of a sold out audience
Yep.
is dramatic, and it just makes everything significantly easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It also allowed us some freedom to kind of bring in a little bit more of our ideas and where we want to bring the festival, you know,
mhm,
uh, in the future. Uh, so I felt like while the pandemic was not preferred, was definitely this was not a preferred situation. It gave us an opportunity to kind of reset and look
mhm,
at, well, what of the festival do we feel that, like,
mhm,
not that the festival needs to improve, but festivals as a whole. What do we always feel like we've been missing, being, you know, filmmakers at festivals for, you know, over the past decade or so? What do we feel is missing? And what do we want to see out of it? And that was able to, you know, we were able to implement some of our ideas a little easier in that
nice.
in that way.
So, what are some of those changes you made? Uh,
Well, one of the things that the festival really has going for it, always has been going for it, is the Filmmakers Lounge. That we
mhm,
have that space next door to the theater that's open all day throughout the whole week of the festival, so people can always network and meet, and and they're always there. We have a beer and wine bar as well, so it's always a casual thing. And they over the years they had panels in there, and then some years they didn't, some years they did. Well, they've always had panels, but some years they had more than others, you
mhm,
know. And our big thing was really trying to give a reason for the filmmakers to be there and always be there. You know,
mhm,
you go to a festival and you want to meet other filmmakers. You
mhm,
really, you know, that's your main, I feel like, obviously besides showing your film off, besides finding your audience, but to meet other people for collaboration. And
mhm,
we felt like it was a huge opportunity, as hadn't been going to that festival ourselves for years. We usually spend most of our day hanging out in the Filmmakers Lounge, and there were the natural lulls where, all
mhm,
right, it'd be 2-3 hours where it was kind of empty, and then a panel would come and people would show up maybe a half hour before the panel, maybe a half hour after, and then things would kind of
mhm,
peter out again until the next one, you know. So the good part of that is it gives the festival staff a bit of a break, you
mhm,
know. But I felt as a filmmaker that there could have been more to that, and unfortunately for us, uh we're trying to keep it full all the time. So unfortunately, we don't get that break that's there anymore. But it keeps filmmakers there. It gives them a reason to stay at the festival. We had attended Fantasia and
mhm,
Frontiers, the the film market, in 2019 as well.
mhm,
And I wanted to bring more of that type of atmosphere to the the festival. Frontiers always had something going on. There was always another attraction for filmmakers, another way of getting them to either be in the room with each other or be in the room with a producer or a financier or a
mhm,
distributor or something. And that's that's, I think that's the only element that's missing at the festival right now. They used to be there years ago, and you know, over time, you know, connections get lost, not like in a negative way, but over time, you know, things change, and different people run, you know, companies, and then, oh, they don't want to do those same events that they used to. So I want to try to bring that back to it, because Deborah always brought the industry to the
mhm,
festival, and we want to try to bring it back again. I think a big part of that is just that over the years, so many festivals have popped up. You
mhm.
know, I mean, I'm going to say when they started, they were probably maybe one of 10 in the immediate Northeast region. Now we're probably one of 100.
I would be surprised if it's that low if we're talking
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
the Northeast. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the general like
Mhm.
hour distance driving, I'm going to say there's maybe 100 festivals at
Yeah, that sounds
least.
right.
And I know at least 5 or 6 others that are within us that are maybe within 6 weeks of the festival.
Yeah, they tend to cluster a lot. Like all the
They do.
genre fests are in the fall. Like,
Yeah.
full stop. It doesn't totally make sense to me. But
Yeah, I think that I mean we're all genre. We have genre blocks, but we are all genre
mhm,
for long. We have our own smaller horror only short film festival, which is Scared for Your Life, as we're Long Island
mhm,
International. So we're LIIFE, and this horror festival is Scared for Your Life. So that's ours in October.
mhm,
And that's but LIIFE has always had a genre block, a horror block. And that
mhm.
was always very popular. And eventually we expanded it out. They started it as a kind of like an invitational one night festival, and now it's ballooned into its own I mean it's still a single night, but now it's full, awards and submissions and everything fest.
That makes sense. I mean, like, speaking as a distributor,
Mm-hmm.
um, there are only so many festivals that it actually makes sense for us to try
Yep.
to really submit and hype, because
Mm-hmm.
we just like, once you get beyond about your 3 beyond your territorial premiere, at some point you start to cannibalize your own audience.
Yes.
And that is a something that every filmmaker has to be aware of, but you also have to be aware of where you should target that premiere and what, I guess, soft benefits there might be to attending a particular genre festival. As in, like, you're probably not going to find meaningful distribution out of most genre festivals.
Mm-hmm.
There are exceptions,
Yeah.
but and hopefully LIIFE is moving towards that goal. Because I think that's kind of the biggest mismatch between filmmaker expectations and the realities of film
Mm-hmm.
festivals, is that you're probably not going to find distribution.
Yeah.
But um, the big thing is just prioritizing which festivals you actually attend as a filmmaker, and having some of those additional services, like what you're talking about with the Filmmakers Lounge, I think would make a big difference for most filmmakers.
Yes.
And it's also really interesting to hear your perspective, given that you started just as a attendee,
Mm-hmm.
or a filmmaker, a featured filmmaker
Yeah.
for this, and you've kind of grown to a significant role, maybe not exactly taking it over, but pretty close to it.
Yeah.
The So first of all, kudos on that transition, and second, I'm gonna be really interested to see what you guys do in 2024 and onward, now that things are actually opening up again.
Yeah,
Um,
this year we did really well.
mhm,
The festival was in July. We did really well. It was one of our highest attended years ever.
mhm,
One of
nice.
like in the top 5 or so. We don't have the full numbers back on it yet, but it was one of the top 5. And I think that what besides first off, even the theater owners are saying people are starting to come back to the theaters.
Mhm,
They're seeing the regular attendance go up, which is great to hear as well.
mhm.
But I think that filmmakers are starting to now come back, and they're starting to get more comfortable with being in person again and being around each other. So to kind of speak to what I like the things that we added to the festival, we've added more of those sorts of events, which is exactly what I think gets filmmakers
Mhm.
that exposure and that they want to be in front of each other and be around each other. My first feature film, I got distribution when I was at Macabre Fair. We didn't play at Macabre Fair Film Festival that year, but I met Rob Housechild of Wild Eye Releasing.
Mhm.
Met him there, and it's actually really funny. One of the actors in the film, he had a film screening there at Macabre Fair that day, and there is a photo of them while they're screening from like he stood up front and took a picture of the audience when he was
Mhm.
doing the Q&A, and there's a picture, and in that picture is me and Rob standing in the back of the room negotiating the deal for our first feature. My second feature, I met oh man, his name is escaping me, and it's gonna oh, it's killing me that I can't think of his name, but I met another producer at the First Contact Film Festival, and they had a film screening there. So I spoke to him. I said, "Hey, we screened back to back. We had very similar themes." So I talked to him. I knew that he had distribution already, so he got me in contact with his his distributor. So, and I ended up getting distribution through ITN from that.
Okay,
So
through Stewart. Then.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember the filmmaker's name though. Yeah. And then the third one I had a sale for the third film. We went through a sales agent, so that had nothing to do with film festivals. But I've found those relationships with with producers and distributors at festivals, and I think that's that it's because those festivals cultivated that atmosphere. So we do things now. I want to try and bring in a producers type of networking event for filmmakers to meet producers and distributors or something. We brought in the DP Expo, where we have local cinematographers actually bring their camera rigs to the room and they set up everything, and it's just an open meeting forum. Everybody just walks and talks and exchanges information for like 3-4 hours, and the room is packed the whole time. I saw that at one festival that they did it, and it was sponsored by, I think, Nikon or Tiffin. So it was a lot of big big name like equipment there. It was cool to stand and play around with it. So we kind of took that idea and said, well, what if we did that with cinematographers? And that gives people a reason to be in the room. One big thing that I've noticed, a lot of filmmakers, a lot of people in general, when you're meeting people, it's hard to just walk up to someone and start talking.
Yes. I was actually trying to figure out a question around exactly that. So
yes. To just walk up and start a conversation it's hard, it's awkward, it's weird, so we're trying to create events like that break the ice before you even walk in the door. So here we have 6-7 tables of people standing here with big camera rigs and steady rigs and dollies and everything set up, and it's just, you just stand there, you look at it and say, what's that? That's it. Conversation started.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Like when I did more community events around the film business and the industry in San Francisco, one technique I'd use to get conversation started is just the very beginning of the day. Literally everybody in the room went around and had 30 seconds to introduce themselves, name what they do, and then random question that is a complete non sequitur. What'd you have for lunch, as an example, or what's the last movie you saw in a theater? Things like that you can answer quickly, but also tell you something about yourself. And also, if it's a little silly, it helps break the ice in the room. So that's just one thing I did. But if you do end up doing that Producers Expo or whatever you want to call it, let me know. I'm only in Philly, so it's not that hard to get to Long Island. But go ahead.
It was another thing that I had seen at Frontiers. I don't know if you've ever been. I'm assuming you've been to Frontiers. You've been to AFM?
Haven't.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So Frontiers does that as well. They stress throughout the course of the week to no, this is not for deal making. We're nothing is set in stone. Don't worry. There's no pressure. We're here to get you in the room with each other. And they would do, each day was a different day. I think one day was a producer's day, one day was distributor's day, and I think one was sales agents, I believe it was. But basically what they did was like distributors, we called it distributors speed dating. They had 10 or 12 tables in the room, and each table had 10 or 15 chairs at them. And at each table was someone representing a different distribution company. So like Lionsgate was here, IFC was over there, every table had a different and every 15-20 minutes or so, a bell rings and everybody gets up and moves to the next table. And the point is for the distributor to stay at the table, and a bunch of new filmmakers sit down, and now the distributor pitches themselves to you and say, here's the types of films we're looking at. Here's the budgets we work with. Here's all the information you need to know whether we are the right place for you. Same thing for producers and sales agents. So it's all about them telling filmmakers what it is they do and what they're looking for. you know.
Mhm.
Another really huge benefit of that is Frontiers, you get the contact book of every, so you did, there's a book, it's
Mhm.
vetted, you pay for it. I think there's something like only 250 attendees each year approximately.
Mhm.
And you end up getting a booklet that has all the information of everything from the week, and it has everyone who's part of that, their contact information. That includes
Mhm.
yourself. If you're one of the attendees, you're in there as well, and you have a little bio in it. And the benefit of this is now you have officially met these people. You have their contact information. You have spoken to them about what they're looking for and what you might have. You are officially no longer, you are solicited.
Yes, you are no longer a unsolicited email, which
Yes,
ends up in the spam box, which
exactly.
is gigantically valuable, really.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the sort of thing I would like to bring something in that realm to the festival in the future. But I know that's
Mhm.
kind of a big undertaking to get a bunch of
Oh
distributors
yeah,
in the
getting
room.
especially getting
Yeah.
the level of which you're talking about there.
Oh yeah.
Like it's a yeah,
That's a monumental task, and that's a question of whether or not we want the festival to be that big in the first place. You
mhm.
know, that's Fantasia and Frontiers. They are, you know, they are top 10 festivals in the world.
Oh yeah.
You know, but I'd like to bring that type of atmosphere to the low budget indie
I think
filmmaking.
it's very easily something you could do. Like I know Rob is based in New Jersey.
Mhm.
And I know uh there are several in the
Yeah,
Northeast. Like a lot of the names you actually mentioned for the big boy distributors, they have reps in New York
yeah,
proper. The like I think you mentioned like some of the names you mentioned are actually headquartered out of New
mhm.
York. So
Yes, yes.
it's very possible for you to attain those just out of proximity.
Mhm.
The big question is, how do you actually capture these people's interest? Because
That I don't know
it's
yet.
yeah, it's a I
Yeah.
mean, I know people at most of those places.
Mhm.
Would they come out to the Long Island International
I
Film Expo because I asked them to? Probably not.
No.
Which is unfortunate because I know pretty much everybody's looking for certain types of genre content
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, that's why I say it's
mhm,
something I'd like to bring. I'd like to bring that feeling of the atmosphere, whether it's a matter of actually having those companies there to do that sort of thing. Again, it's a big undertaking. It's a big ask. So I
yeah,
don't know if we can actually, but that's the atmosphere I want to bring, where filmmakers feel like they can. This festival is a place to go to move themselves forward. You know,
yeah.
I do feel that, like, even myself, like, as much as I would love to be on an IFC, have a film on IFC Midnight, I don't feel like I
Mhm,
work on that budget level yet. On that budgeting, I just don't feel like I'm personally there yet. You know,
mhm.
I've made 3 feature films, and each one of them has cost around $20,000. You know, so
Yeah.
unless I'm making Blair Witch Project, you're not making a movie for 20,000 that's going to be on IFC Midnight. It's very, very rare, few and far between. That's the dream, but
You are correct.
it's not reality.
Unless you're making Skinamarink, Paranormal Activity, or
Which
Blair
is
Witch.
coincident. Yeah,
Yeah.
Skinamarink is got picked up by Bayview, who is our third distributor.
Not exactly. Skinamarink was bought by Mutiny Pictures at the same time we were being acquired by Bayview.
Okay, okay,
So that's I know that one personally. But
gotcha.
yeah, it's a Bayview did end up taking most of that, but
Mhm.
there was some other things on the Mutiny end that I personally did on that film.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So yeah, no, it's not well publicized.
Okay,
But the I didn't do a ton, which is why it's not well publicized. It was mainly the initial acquisitions past the decision to pick it up and the initial round with IFC of
okay,
negotiation. That was yeah.
nice.
So um
Yeah,
but yeah, there
I didn't
are
know how that, when I had
yeah.
just signed with Bayview, and like a month later or so they were promoting Skinamarink. I was like, wow, that's crazy, because they didn't
Mhm.
really have films that got anywhere near that big.
Yeah, no, that was unexpected. It got more traction than we thought it would.
To say the
It's
least.
a good film, and I'm not dogging it. It's just a nobody in the industry ever expects to be a part of that big an outlier.
No,
basically.
that was
So
it was its own thing. I think that's what pushed it. It was so unique and so different. There was nothing else like that.
Yeah,
you know,
very true.
Like I don't even know how you guys considered to market a film like that. I couldn't even begin like watching a film. How the hell do you promote this? You know,
IFC made all the difference in that, frankly. That was a IFC and Shudder between the team there. They were they really enabled that film to be the success it has been. I think exactly what I told the filmmakers when we took it was, there's something about this. I have no idea how we're going to market it yet. We're going to have to figure that out, basically. So looks like, and IFC did, which I'm ecstatic about.
Caught lightning in a bottle. And I think that's something that filmmakers need to learn as well, that is lightning in a bottle, you know. In the last 20 years, the movies that have done that, you can say, are Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, and now Skinamarink, that have been this super low budget, you know, $10, $20, $30,000 films that have turned into multi-million-dollar films. It is, and each one of them kind of changed horror filmmaking in their own way. They brought something brand new to the table, you know. And I think that's what was the key to those success. They were something that nobody had seen before. You know, even if other films did exist similar to them, it wasn't something that you know, a major audience had seen. And of course, the other key to that is the companies that they were that released them. You know, I mean, Blair Witch like pretty much made it was Lionsgate, right?
I think it was Universal. I'm not sure. Might have been.
Was it?
I don't remember offhand. It might have been Paramount too.
Possibly.
I remember somebody took a major. It might have even been Sony. I just remember because I was on a panel with Dan Merrick, who at the Seattle Film Summit, where and Dan was one of the producers of Blair. And he basically said that the only way he was going to get paid from a major studio at the time was that he went into court and held up a copy of Time magazine where he was on the cover, having made the most profitable film of all time, and he wasn't getting residuals. So that was a pretty good piece of evidence, I suppose. I should have Dan on here. Dan's a good guy. Are you still making movies, or are you just?
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, the festival's kind of taken over a lot of my life the last couple, but I hope to be. The goal right now is to be in some level of production of the next one of our next feature by this time next year. So I'm working on script ideas right now, and hopefully by the end of the festival next year, we can go right into the next feature.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's a I'm pretty sure you know most of what I do is more around distribution and finance and sales and all of that. Yeah. But I had the pleasure of being on set for Tim Travers and the Time Travelers Paradox this last December in 2022. And it did kind of light a fire on me to get back on sets, even though I am a producer. And you kind of don't want executive producers on set. Generally, if we're there, it's a bad thing. Unless we're either meeting a celebrity or there for a really big explosion or guiding studio
bring
visit.
The insurance.
Yeah, basically it's anything like that. It's the we kind of have to deal with that, and it's more just on the studio visit thing. It's if it was a scene where one of the actors had modesty concerns, I would not be there, nor would any studio exec. It's just if it's my set, I wouldn't let it. But it's more just as everybody here knows, being on set is like being on the factory floor. It can be dangerous if you don't actually pay attention and know what you're doing. And 100%. That's why you need somebody who's got a little bit more of their water legs out there helping with the studio visits.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. But anyway, I actually met that filmmaker through the Seattle Film Summit as a part of, I think he was one of my initial one-on-ones that I did for that summit, where basically I would have a 15-minute meeting with a single filmmaker about drumming up new business for me and just providing value for them, basically. So it was a very good model that I think is a faster, is a much more attainable level for smaller festivals to get started at, as opposed to the big speed dating thing. Because those I was able to get 10 or 12 meetings out of, and I got a couple clients, and that's basically why somebody like me goes, is to find new talent, find new movies, find new everything. And it's not just filmmakers who want to sell their completed film. The distributors also need completed films to run their business. So it can be very mutually beneficial.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have a comment for that. I just agree. It's like, that's it.
it's yes. I just realized I'd been talking for a minute, so I tried to stop. But the so you make so you said there's genre pictures at this film fest. Are there is it just horror, or are there action movies, or what sorts of genres are we talking about?
They've generally had a horror film. They've generally had a horror shorts block. They've always called the Scared for Your Life block. As I said before, that's now its own festival as well. So we still have the Scared for Your Life block.
Sorry.
It's all right. Give you a minute.
Yeah, thank you.
So we've always had the horror block, the Scared for Your Life block, which, as I said before, moved into its own horror film festival as well. So we still have that Scared for Your Life block, and we do that late night Fridays. Generally, we try to preface it with a horror feature as well. So we'll have 2 horror blocks, a feature followed by the Scared for Your Life shorts block. Last year, we started a retrofuturism block on Wednesday night, which is the Thursday night, which is sci-fi. This year, we happened to get enough good entries where we created an action block, and we called that Kicking Ass Taking Names. And we also created the Midnight Madness block for Saturday night, midnight, which is all just off the wall, unclassifiable, strange, weird, quirky, you don't know what you're going to get type, like weirdo mixtape blocks. That has
call it the weirdo mixtape block.
That's it. It's a weirdo mix. That's the best way to describe it. It's a weirdo mixtape of just some of the most unique films that you ever see. And it's become one of our most attended blocks because on top of the mystery of what you're going to get at it, we also I create a custom Midnight Madness pin. So every attendee gets their own gets a pin that for that year. And we also have a Midnight Madness award, which the filmmakers have to be in attendance for in order to be eligible to win in that block. And it's a handmade award that I do every year, so it's something different. The first year I made like a little movie marquee. Last year I did a stack of videotapes, and this year I made an award out of a couple of 16 millimeter reels.
Nice.
And it looked like a giant lollipop. But that's another one of those things where I feel like the film festival, especially if you want to stand out as a festival and attract new and interesting and good and really prolific filmmakers, you want to give them a reason to want to be there, and I think that that's one of those types of blocks that encourages interesting films and encourages interesting filmmakers. And the fact that you have to be there to win an award, it really pushes people. You got to be there, and filmmakers show up. I can't tell you how many times over the years, and I'm sure you know this, ad nauseum that you go to a film festival and you sit in a short block of shorts of 10, 15, and then at the end of the block, there's two filmmakers standing on stage to speak for, and you just watched 90 minutes of movies and there's only 10 minutes of which spoken for, and as an audience, you're kind of like, oh, okay. You just, all right, great. These filmmakers are here. Let me hear from them. I think that's something else filmmakers need to get through their head. Be at the festival, because no matter how good your film is, features aside, no matter how good your film is as a short film, if you are not there to represent your film, chances are the audience forgot about your film the minute they walked out the door.
That's
if
accurate.
You are there. Yeah, if you are there to represent it and answer questions and speak to people, regular audience members, the average film goer, they want to meet the filmmaker. They want to go home and say, hey, you're not going to believe who I met. Because at some point in 1991, there is someone who's got a story of when they met Kevin Smith randomly at some screening, and he's been telling that story for 35 years.
Oh yeah, no, that's a thing. Like, completely agree. And that's, by the way, that also goes for people behind the camera or even behind the back office. I still tell stories about how I met Claudia Christian, who was the female lead in Babylon 5.
Okay,
I still tell that story.
Yeah,
personally, because it's a really good story that I won't tell on here. But it's a but it is a really good story, and also it helps that I'm a giant nerd. And so did you lead your action block off with a feature, or was it all shorts on that one?
It's all shorts. Yeah,
okay.
It was all short films. We had a Western feature this year, which was really unique, because you don't see those very often.
They're coming back.
They are. We get 3 different Westerns submitted this year, 1 feature and 2 shorts. Very random that happened, because in the 3 years I've been watching, there haven't been any Westerns. Finally, there was. From what I understand, there's a studio that opened up somewhere around the New York, Pennsylvania border area that has a Western set.
Oh,
it opened up sometime in the last year or 2. Or rather, maybe they expanded a Western set in the last year or 2. I'm not entirely sure. But this is what I found out from another, from, I believe, actually my wife found out from Greg Lamberson, who runs Buffalo Dreams. He said that there's a Western set that opened up around that Pennsylvania, New York border area. He's like, and it's just got an influx of people who are because it's just so different. It's so interesting and unique look for your film. And I think that might be partially where at least the Northeastern influx of Westerns, because to have Westerns come from New York filmmakers is very weird. That's very strange.
I grew up in Colorado.
Okay,
so I can say Westerns just make all the sense in the world to me, but I see the disconnect for New York and Pennsylvania filmmakers. Really, it would make more sense to make a sequel to Witness. It's all about the Amish country for those who don't watch old Harrison Ford movies. But so I don't know. Also, Amish country's weird, man.
Yeah,
it's
Amish country. They like it that way. It keeps the riffraff out.
Yes, it's true. All right. So what's some advice you would give to filmmakers who want to get the most out of their next film festival attendance?
Well, first things first, attend. Be there. I make a habit of, I'm going to say 90% of my submissions are only to festivals that I plan on attending. There's that other 10%. It's like, well, I have to send to Telluride. I have to send to, and it's like, I don't plan on flying to Colorado for it, but if I get in, I'm freaking going to, because, you have to be there. But, that's number one. Number two, research the festivals you're going to send to. And this is a huge ask, because it takes a lot of work to research, especially if you have a feature. I assume you're going to send to anywhere between 20 and 50 festivals. Assumption. Your average, unless you have like a really exceptional film, your average film is going to go between 30 and 50% acceptance rate. So if you send to 50 festivals, you'd be lucky to get into 25. And that's normal. That
would be a lot still.
Yeah, exactly. That's normal. And that's again, like you said, that's a lot. That's on the high end of 25 festivals for a feature. So plan for 10. Plan for 10 if you send to 50. That, again, high end. I'm being generous.
I think 10 is a more realistic expectation.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying in terms of plan for only submit to the ones you can attend, which that makes sense.
Yeah. Put your festival run must be part of your budget. Plan it when you're making the film. Here's what I know a lot of filmmakers. Okay, wait. Let me step back a second. First off, when it comes to researching your festival, know what you're sending to. You need to know what they want. You need to know what types of films they normally play. Now, that doesn't mean that just because they gave an award to a found footage film last year that they're definitely going to want a found footage film this year. That doesn't mean that either. No, not at all. In fact, they might not want another found footage film this year, simply because they gave the award to it last year. Well, because festivals realize that the more documentaries you play, the more documentaries you get submitted. The more horror films you play, the more you get submitted, because there are filmmakers out there doing that research. So you need to be one of them doing that research as well. You need to know what the festival wants and what they're looking for. So more than the style of the film, you need to know the genre, the feel that they're looking for. You have a film festival like Genre Blast. They're looking for unique. They want unique, different films, and it comes in the title, Genre Blast. Yeah. So if you have a film that literally combines two different genres in a very unique way, they're probably the festival for you. But if you've made a rom-com, probably not. If you've made a rom-com with aliens, hey, maybe.
That's or a rom-com with zombies. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. They might be looking for that. But so research your festivals and put that money for festivals in your budget before you even begin shooting. No, you're going to put a couple $100, $1,000 or so aside at the end, and that's just for your submissions. I can't tell you how many filmmakers I know personally or have met over the years that it's like, well, it's really expensive to submit to festivals. It's really hard. Like, you're right. Yes, it is expensive, but did you not consider this when you spent 5 years making this movie and you didn't spend 5 minutes thinking of how you're going to get it out into the world?
That's a common problem.
Yes, it's a huge...
I can't tell you how many filmmakers at this point, it's by proxy, thankfully, who say, oh yeah, my distribution strategy, get into Sundance. That's
never. Nope.
So many different reasons you're wrong.
Nope. I think I submitted to Sundance once, and I have never since. And I've made dozens of shorts and, again, 3 features. I've submitted once, and I'm not wasting my money on it anymore.
I mean, unfortunately, it's just kind of where you are. In order to stand a solid chance at any of the at least top 5, maybe even top 10 film festivals, you kind of have to have an inside game.
Yes.
Whereas you need to know somebody who can bring your film to the attention of a programmer. Otherwise, you're just not getting in. Full stop.
Most of those festivals, those films, by the time they get there, most of them are already spoken for. They've already got some level of, at the very least, some level of deal being worked out for distribution. Your feature playing at Sundance, if you don't have 5 offers on your table by the time you're there, you're doing something wrong.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, there are a shockingly high number of undistributed feature films that come out of even your Sundances that are just like they'll premiere at Sundance. they won't get a deal, and then nobody in the general public will ever hear of them. This is common.
Which then makes me wonder how they got in the first place. Like, that means that there was a programmer who saw it and said, I just love this film and I feel that it deserves a platform, and you want to be one of those films. You really do.
Yeah.
That somebody they just love it. But the fact is, not everybody is one of those filmmakers. 99.9% of us are not those filmmakers that are going to send the 1 in 10,000 films a year that Sundance gets submitted. You have to be the 5 of that 10,000 that these programmers say this is unique.
Yeah, and it just and not only that, you also have to hit the mandate right on for that year, because each year Sundance has a certain number of themes that they want to emphasize, and you have to just hit the lucky stroke of being in that subset.
Yeah.
And it's not a solid strategy for you to get distribution. It's just not.
No.
Sorry.
I think something that does a piece of advice is go to festivals whether you're playing or not. Sundance, let's say you want to break into Sundance, go volunteer, work Sundance, get to know the other programmers, know the organizers, the festival directors, work the festival, and you'll learn what they're looking for by being there. I think that's something that a lot of filmmakers overlook, is just volunteer at the festivals. Are always looking for volunteers.
Yeah.
go just spend a couple of days. Like, we have volunteers every year, and they just help us check in the filmmakers. They don't do anything crazy, but they get to spend the week of whichever days they're available, just meeting the filmmakers. They help us check them in. When we have an interview corner, and we had somebody, I don't have it sitting here, but they just hold the clipboard. What's your name? What's your film? And the literal file number so that when I edit the interview together, I don't have to search for their name. Just there's the file number. This is who's in it. And that's what a volunteer does, or they check in a filmmaker. They give them their filmmaker badge. Here's your program. These are very simple things that they do. But as a volunteer, you get to meet every single filmmaker who walks in the door. You get to meet every director, every producer, every actor. You are there, and you are someone that they are looking to speak to because you have information.
You have information that they need. Primarily, where is the bathroom?
Yes. See?
Yes.
Even so, you are someone that they need to speak to. So again, that's another way of breaking that ice. Of getting you in conversation with someone you want to meet, someone you want to talk to, someone you might work with in the future. So that's another thing. If there's a festival that's local to you, doesn't matter how small or how big it is, volunteer, work the festival, pick a year and go and meet. We had, for our second feature, I got a lot of rejections. I got a lot of rejections for that one. I think
it happens. It's like,
I think we submitted to 50 or 60 festivals. I think we got into 5 or 6, but then I spent the next year and a half attending most of the festivals that we didn't get into, because I wanted to see, what are they looking for? What were we doing wrong? What could we have improved on? What are they looking for? There was one short film that we did fairly well with. I think we had like a 70% acceptance rate, but this was in 2019. It had already been almost 10 years at this, again, targeting the festivals. I know what this one's looking for. So 75% acceptance rate out of 45 festivals I sent to, we got into like 30 or 35 of them.
I mean, but then you're also a known entity is another thing there, that because you've been submitting for these 10 years and because you've probably submitted to the same one multiple times, probably not every year, but
yes, they do start to recognize you. They remember you and they see you get better.
Yeah, they do. And it's a very similar thing to grant writing, really. When you're applying, when you start writing grants, you're going to get 95% declines. But if you keep applying, that win rate's going to inch up year over year. And it's kind of the same basic principle here. Like, do you know the name Jim Cummings?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. He got his start, his bigger start was around South by Southwest and giving a speech at South by Southwest that was, and the reason he got on that stage is he was championed by Ted Hope. Now the
Okay.
part, I actually booked him to give an early version of that talk for the Institute for International Film Finance, which was like the third event I ever organized in my life, and just happened to meet this guy and we got there. But if Jim didn't have the South by Southwest speaking gig, he wouldn't have eventually gotten Thunder Road into Sundance and then the feature version a year later. It just kind of is becoming a known entity in these spaces, is the big thing there. And it's something that's, I guess this is where one reason where filmmakers complain about, and just people in general complain about nepotism. And there's decent reason to complain about nepotism, but the just people wanting to pay it forward to people that they've known for a while, I have a little bit of a harder time being annoyed about that personally.
Yeah. And well, because like you said, he did the speaking gig. That's why I say volunteer, get them to know you. Because another part of it is that it's a film festival. There is still some level of a business to this. We still have to be able to afford to rent this theater.
Yeah.
Okay. And while we may not have a sold out screening, every single screening, sometimes we may not even close to it. We still have to afford this. So one of those considerations is plain and simple. Is this a local filmmaker that we know is going to show up and sell 5 tickets? If we have 2 films that are neck and neck, these are very close, but this one lives 10 minutes away and they were at the festival last year supporting a friend of theirs. This one lives in Australia. It's probably going to go to the local film, and then, they may fly in, but we don't know that. We do not know
if they do fly in, they probably don't have much of a local network.
It's quite possible, unless again it's a name that
Yeah.
But we're on the business end of it, we have to go with the safer bet that the filmmaker who lives one town over and was here last year is going to come this year. And since he was here last year for his friend's film, they're going to come this year with their friend again. That's a great, at least we have that. So it's exactly that. It's there's the reason for the nepotism is just that. It's a safer bet because this is still a business in some form. We all do this because we love it. I love being able to give a platform to filmmakers who wouldn't be able to get it otherwise. I like being able to have that ability to show off a film that may disappear in 2 or 3 years, but at least we get to say, hey, we played that this year. We screened that. And this guy or girl, 10 years from now becomes that Kevin Smith, or that Ava DuVernay, or, and they become huge. And we played one of their films when they had just begun.
Everybody's looking for those early stories. That is at least part of why we keep making and distributing and showcasing films. It's just why we're in the game. If we wanted to make more money, we'd sell insurance, which don't do.
There's easier ways of getting rich than the film industry.
So sorry, I'm off on an insurance brain thing because I actually did used to sell insurance, and there's a very good reason I don't anymore. But
we have we do one of our panels specifically because of that. One of our panels is legalities and liabilities. We have an insurance agent and an entertainment lawyer, and they speak and answer questions because I think that's one of the most valuable things that every filmmaker overlooks is your insurance and your lawyer.
Entirely. You need a good lawyer. No matter how well behaved you are, you need a good lawyer in this industry. It's
and we have that panel every single year, and it's always well attended, and they answer a ton of questions.
Oh, I am sure that's very well attended. I mean, that's almost worth me taking the trip up there. So thank you very much for coming on, Manny.
Absolutely.
It's been fun. Now we're going to move on to the 3 questions I close out all
Okay.
of my guests with.
Okay.
The first question you can answer second, because sometimes it takes a second to think. And that first question is, what are your top 3 favorite movies as it stands right this second now of all time? They can change in 10 minutes or even 30 seconds, but what's your vibe on your top 3 right now?
Number 1 is always Creepshow.
It's a good pick.
Always my top film of all time is Creepshow. At the moment, my 2 and 3, I'm gonna say Altered States.
Okay.
Which is always in my top 5 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And safe bet, Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, it's a good. There's a reason it survives.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, those are good picks. I am glad that as a horror filmmaker, you chose mainly horror movies, if not entirely. Some of my other Halloween interviews have not chosen horror movies, and I've been surprised.
They legitimately are my favorite.
Yes.
Horror has been my favorite genre my entire life. It's always been. It's kind of hard when you put me on the spot to think of something that I love that's not horror. My brain always goes to American Beauty. I love American Beauty. I loved that in the theater, but it's like that's the best I can think of.
It is a good movie.
It is.
Yeah, it's one of like 5 movies that got me to go to film school, really. The biggest one was Apocalypse Now, which
okay.
I'll defend.
I have not seen Apocalypse Now in about 30 years.
It's worth
I
a
have
rewatch.
Yeah, I've been trying to find the Redux Blu-ray with like both of them, like and then watch them. Watch
that
them.
would be hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to watch them back to back, but to compare, same thing for Blade Runner. I have the set with all 4 cuts, and I also haven't watched that in about 30 years. So I'm like, I want to watch them all and see the difference before I go to 2049.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so second question: if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that advice be, and when would you give it to yourself? And don't say buy Apple stock.
Don't say what?
Buy Apple stock.
No. I think I don't know if I would, but if I'm going to answer it, I would say I'd probably go back to like the 20 or 21-year-old self and say, start filmmaking now.
Okay.
My high school had a broadcasting studio, and I learned how to edit and run a board in high school. Yeah. They had a full like $500,000 broadcasting studio that they didn't do anything with. They built it, and then they didn't have a program for it, and they ended up just running English classes out of it. My freshman year of high school had an English class in the stage space. Yeah. Yes, okay. Ridiculous. But the teacher who was in there had never been in that room before. He said they built it 2 or 3 years earlier, and it's been closed ever since. Now they're just using it as a teaching space. So he started messing around with things. And again, this is freshman year, and I started messing around. I was like, well, this is really cool. Me and 2 or 3 other students became friends with the teacher and started messing around with stuff. So while he had classes in there, we were sitting behind the one-way mirror glass, playing with the cameras and turning things on and just tweaking and playing mess. And this is 1994. Yeah, we're just messing around with stuff. Nobody even knows we're sitting in there. I spent most of my high school time cutting classes sitting in this room, just messing with this board. They also had a dark room upstairs, and I was part of the one of my art teachers brought back a photography club and taught how to develop film and all that stuff. And then after high school, I moved more into music, and we had a band and everything, but we never went anywhere. So my advice would be stop that and just stick with the movies.
Fair enough.
Go to film school sooner.
You look like somebody who was in a band. I
It
just looked like
informs.
somebody who sang a lot of karaoke, and really the band
Hey.
is way more.
Yeah, the music is still important. Music was my first love.
Yeah.
Music was my first love. So I'm very musically inclined with my films. My films become, this is why I say I probably wouldn't go back and say, because I'm such a stickler about the music in my films. And I think that's just because I spent so many years doing it, that it's just as important to me as everything else. But if I was going to say one thing, that would be it. Start making films sooner rather than waiting until you're 28 years old.
That makes sense.
You know?
Cool. So then the last question, hardest question of the three. Where can people find you, and what would you be looking for from anybody who might be listening or watching this?
Well, I mean, you can find everything from me. I'm at massgravepictures.com. All of my socials and everything are on there. Links to the festival is on there. I don't know what I'd be looking for in terms of. What do you mean? As in,
like, if an example for you I could think of is you would be looking for more submissions to the festival. It's the wrong time for that, or just most of the time people leave that question unanswered. I ask it just in case there's anything there. So
yeah, I can't think of. Yeah, that's a weird question. It's an odd, interesting question. I mean, I'd love for people to come to our festival.
yeah.
I'm looking for attendees at the festival. We just announced, started announcing the films that are playing for Scared for Your Life. That is October 21st, right? Oh my God. Of course. Here I go on the spot, and I'm gonna screw it up, right? Yeah, it's Saturday, October 21st. Yes, and I always screw it up because last year was the 27th. So the 1 and the 7 just keep screwing me up. So it's Saturday, October 21st at Huntington Cinema Arts Center in New York. It is a one-night event. I believe we open doors at 6:30-ish. Similarly to how we run LIIFE in Huntington Cinema Arts is all in one. So we have the movies in the theater, and then we have the cafe space where we have horror vendors, and we're going to have Jess O'Lantern doing musical performances between films. There's a costume contest. There's the awards ceremony. It's a full-on Halloween event.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's a good time to have beyond just films. There's more to do than just watch movies.
Cool. Well, since that'll be on the 21st, we'll actually drop this the Tuesday before.
Okay,
so
cool.
There'll be some ability to talk about it and use it to help promote on all of that.
Awesome.
So, cool. So thank you very much for coming, Manny. You're always welcome back. It was fun, if nothing else. And
thank you. I hope we got out of it what you were looking for.
I have no idea what I was looking for, which is a standard thing for these. So yeah, so thank you everybody at home for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Check out the event on the 21st, the Scared for Your Life, and yeah, so beyond that, just check out my free independent film business resources pack, which you can get at theguerrillarep.com/resources. It's got a free ebook, free white paper, free investment deck template, contact tracking templates for distributors and festivals, and a whole lot more. See you next week, and don't forget to hit that bell or hit auto download. Thanks.